Ain't nobody got time for that. Ain't nobody got time, ain't nobody got time, ain't nobody got time for that. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. 2 new shows, 2 days. Chris, what the bloody hell's happened? Well, we've got some breaking news, and it's not the fact that I'm using this microphone. I'll tell you in a minute why I'm using this, but first up, the massive news that Chris Froome potentially might be having a mid-season transfer to another team. We're going to get into that news story shortly. First up, let me explain this microphone. It's not that interesting. So first up, mic news. Well, basically, my lav mic that I've been using is starting to sound like this. So I'm going with this one. I've recorded this twice, and anyway, doesn't matter. Big news is not only that Chris Froome potentially might be going on a mid-season transfer to another team. Lance Armstrong's back in the news. Like, are we sick to death now of hearing about Lance Armstrong? Do we enjoy hearing about him? Has he got anything else that he really needs to say? Well, according to ESPN and 30 for 30, which is a cracking sports documentary series, if you know anything about sports, then you'll have checked out a 30 for 30 at some point in your life. But they've just made this one all about Lance Armstrong.
What is the worst thing that you did?
What is the worst thing? Everybody in the world needs to get this question. What is the worst thing you've ever done?
If you believe in miracles, if you believe in fairy tales, then you believe in Lance Armstrong.
The talk is that this is Lance Armstrong's effort to resurrect his reputation.
He's very good at making sure he's one step removed from true responsibility of his actions.
I'm going to be naturally skeptical of whatever Lance does or says.
The cynics and the skeptics, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry you can't dream big, and I'm sorry you don't believe in miracles.
All the praise that we put upon him was all well deserved. Winning 7 Tour de France's is not easy. That's extremely difficult to do.
The French media began taking shots at Armstrong last week. It escalated over the past 2 days, accusing him of taking performance-enhancing drugs.
I can never be honest about this because all of this goodness will come crashing down.
I did tell Lance to just come out and say it. I mean, this is real now.
I needed a nuclear meltdown, and I got it. I'm not going to lie to you, Marina. I'm going to tell you my truth.
So yeah, that's it. What's your thoughts on this one? Like, has he got anything else that he needs to say? Like, I don't know. It's always interesting to get your comments, but don't worry about him because we spoke about him only a few weeks ago, and people no one sat on the fence. People were either hating him or actually enjoying him. Me personally, pros and cons in it. Yes, he won 7 Tour de France. Technically, he didn't win them, but he won them in my eyes. Cheated, broke the rules. Yes. Bullied, intimidated, threatened people. Yes. Dickhead for that. But the guy still got on his bike, and that's the one thing I always kind of look at, is that he did get back on the bike. It doesn't, hey, listen, getting back on the bike doesn't stop him being a dickhead for being the intimidator and sociopath that he is, but the guy trained, the guy put in the hours. And do you know what? Barring all those sociopathic tendencies in him, if everyone was on a level playing field, right? Cheaters, non-cheaters, dopers, non-dopers, like everybody, if they were all on a straight line and we knew for a fact that none of them were cheating, right? He still would have come out on top. He would have. Like, I don't care what anybody says about that. He would have. He would have trained harder. He'd have pushed harder, and he would have come out on top. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are, if you want, on this this brand new Lance Armstrong documentary. Or are you just bored of his documentaries, his interviews, and his films? Next up, and yes, I know you want to get onto the Chris Froome story and find out all about that. We'll get onto that shortly. First, though, Tour of Britain organisers headed to Twitter today with this unfortunate tweet. Today we have taken the decision to postpone this September's edition of the Tour of Britain. Please visit our website for more info on what it means for our fantastic route from Penzance to Aberdeen, which will now take place in 2021. Hashtag Tour of Britain. Over on their website, they issued this press release saying, following detailed consultations with British cycling, regional stakeholders, sponsors and partners of the race, organisers of the Tour of Britain have decided to postpone the forthcoming edition of the Tour of Britain, 6th to the 13th of September, with all parties in agreement on this course of action. Moving on later in the press release saying, across the UK there are significant doubts around the potential to stage large-scale public events and gatherings such as the Tour of Britain as early as September, and while any form of social distancing remains in place and there isn't a vaccine available, people's health and safety must come first. The same route will take place, however, in September of 2021, so we are going to see that route all the way from the bottom in Cornwall, Penzance somewhere, all the way up to the top of Aberdeen. So technically one of the longest and biggest ever. Is this a surprise? I mean, not really. Not when you look at the rescheduled UCI World Tour calendar. We spoke about this last week. We spoke about it a couple of weeks ago as well. If that UCI calendar goes ahead as scheduled, you've got the Tour de France, you've got Tirreno Adriatico, and you've got 2 Grand Prix over in Canada, which are currently still taking place. On top of that, you would have had the Tour of Britain sitting in the middle of all that. I mean, who the hell from the World Tour would have turned up? You wouldn't have got anyone. You'd have been racing the Swannies and the Mechanics. No one would have been able to ride. 3 World Tour races on across the rest of the world. No one would have come to the Tour of Britain, and that is massive, massive blow for UK cycling and the Tour of Britain, because it looks now like, well, British cycling are pretty much saying that there's no large-scale events happening, which I don't know how large a large-scale event is, but for me, even a 3rd and a 4th cat race down at your local club potentially could be a large-scale gathering. So we're saying technically that the racing's off in the UK now, because once September's come and gone, no one's racing beyond September. And if they're not putting the Tour of Britain on in September, you can't help thinking that there's going to be 0 racing now taking place here in the UK. And then you've got to think, if the UK are stopping the Tour of Britain, which is 8 days now, 8 stages, surely they're going to have to cancel the Tour de France. 21 stages, millions more people. Could have been good seeing a few of those smaller teams from the UK actually getting some exposure this year. I mean, the UK racing scene is already on its arse. What's going to happen to it now when all these sponsors that put money in this year have got 0 out on their return of investment? Bloody cycling. And then finally, this news on Chris Froome. It broke less than an hour ago over on Cycling News. First up, they put out this tweet saying, Chris Froome in discussions over a mid-season transfer. 4-time Tour de France champion weighing up his options away from Team INEOS. And then over on their website, they confirm that Froome has been in discussions with several teams inquiring about his services for 2021 and beyond that. But with the Tour de France rescheduled for later in the season, coupled with a lack of clarity over leadership, the idea of a mid-season switch has also been raised in discussions with rival teams. And as it stands right now, Froome is in his last year of a 3-year contract with Team INEOS. There's been no extension planned for that contract yet, so he could be going elsewhere, and he could be going elsewhere as soon as bloody July. Cycling News have said that at least 2 teams have confirmed that they've been speaking to him and that they want to try and get him this season. And this comes after the news of Egan Bernal last week saying that he's not going to throw away an opportunity to win another Tour de France. Last week, Egan Bernal said to reporters, I'm young, I've already won 1 Tour de France, and I'm not going to throw away an opportunity to win another Tour de France, that's for sure. That I would sacrifice myself being at 100%, I don't think I'm going to do that, nor will he, as in Froome, nor will anybody. Right then, so over to you. Chris Froome in another team, potentially this season. Can you see it happening? I mean, I can't see it personally happening. I think it would be stupid for Team INEOS are too smart. Dave Brailsford's too smart to let Froome go to another team. But then again, maybe he is smart enough to let him go to another team. Maybe Brailsford is the Alex Ferguson of Team INEOS. Alex Ferguson was renowned for bringing in the young players and then getting them to their peak. And then as soon as he saw them just starting to dip a little bit, boom, out the door. And maybe that's the same with Froome. Like, there's no loyalty when it comes to winning the Tour de France. Egan Bernal's not going to sacrifice himself for a man who, not technically over the hill by any means, but is coming back off a serious injury. He's a lot older than them now, and you can't help thinking that Egan Bernal, on his day, I could be wrong with this. Leave your comments down below. I think Egan Bernal can shove it right up Chris Froome. I think he could take him on in the mountains and beat him. And I think Egan Bernal is only going to get better. Froome, with all due respect to him, he's either going to just scrape it or he's not going to reach the mark anymore. But then again, is it better to have Froome on Team INEOS, not let him go anywhere because technically he's still under contract, and just let him go to the Tour de France knowing that Egan Bernal is going to lead? Because as soon as you give that opportunity to another team to have Chris Froome on their team, what's going to happen? They're going to rally around him like an absolute beast, and he potentially, depending where he went, could end up beating Egan Bernal. He's not going to beat him in Team INEOS. There's no way that'll happen. But he could definitely beat him elsewhere. But where would he go? That's the question. That is the question I want you to answer. Where do you think he could go? Where would you like to see him go? Like if we had a Chris Froome at this year's Tour de France, if it all happened, it's not going to. But if it did, where would you like to see Chris Froome race? And who would you like to see Chris Froome race alongside? Movie star? Could Chris Froome be one of 20 leaders at Movie Star? Or would he not feel like he's getting the leadership he needs? I don't know. Anyway, leave your comments down below and let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. A very impromptu news show. I was intending on streaming tonight, which I am still doing. So if I've managed to do everything right today, you're watching this now and you'll hopefully be able to tune into the live stream shortly. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you've enjoyed it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you've not done already, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live with our live streams or when we drop a new video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.